Hello, and Tess here again. Today I want to continue with this little discussion that we're having on heavy metals and specifically on mercury. And that's just the mercury is the metal I probably have to treat most in my clinic. And I just want to sort of state right up front is I think we all have mercury in our system. So we all could do with a little bit of information and learn a little bit more about mercury. So it's actually the organic form of mercury that is very, very dangerous to us and does the damage in our cells, and that's called methylmercury. And what happens is when you become when you're exposed to mercury now, either through dentistry or vaccinations or through fish or whatever the exposure is, consumer products, in your gut bacteria will convert that mercury into methylmercury, and it's super, super, super dangerous for your system. So what it does inside of our cells is I'll explain it a little bit like this. So in our cells, we have mitochondria. And the mitochondria are our little power stations in every cell. And their job is to produce a chemical energy form for us. It's called a molecule called ATP. All right, that's our little energy molecule. And that little energy molecule, its job is to provide the energy for your cells and to produce biochemical reactions. All right, so that's the job. So it's basically your life functions, your biochemical reactions in your body is facilitated only because there's this little bit of energy produced in ATP that will help that reaction take place alongside of the enzymes. Okay, so ATP is produced through this process inside the mitochondria along what we call an electron transport chain. I'm not going to go into the biochemistry of that, but so that's inside the mitochondria. There's this process that's called the electron transport chain. Now at the end of that the outcome of that process is this beautiful electromagnetic cloud of ATP that is released. Okay, now the problem comes in because we need ATP to be alive and our cells to be alive and to perform its functions. Mercury is the big problem because it actually disrupts and it breaks the electron transport chain. And in the process, it actually produces hydroxy ions, okay, not ATP. So hydroxy ions are free radicals, and you've heard about free radicals. Well, they're not really what we want in our system at all. They cause all sorts of trouble in our cells, and they can lead long term to many degenerative diseases. Alzheimer's and cancers, and all sorts of things like that. And it's not just, say, one mercury atom produces one hydroxy free radical. It's more like one mercury produces 1,000 of these, or thousands of these free radicals that go rampant and cause damage to our cells. So the destruction is caused in our cells, and that means that we actually through the mitochondria we're actually not just producing damage, but we also don't have our energy molecule. So it's no wonder then that people who have this heavy metal kind of situation in their cells are also suffering from chronic and debilitating dis-ease states. So the mercury damages every cell it comes into contact with. So if it comes into contact with your liver, it's going to affect your liver function, which is your biggest, major detox organ, if it comes into contact with your kidneys, which are very, very vulnerable to heavy metals, it's going to affect your kidney functions. Okay, and we spoke about the kidney just a little bit in the last video as well. Kidney is the root of your power. Okay, it's an amazing organ, and mercury can cause big damage there, and it's excreted through that channel as well. Other metals are excreted mostly through the bowel, whereas mercury, the route of excretion is through the kidneys, mostly. Yeah, so if mercury comes into contact with your thyroid, it is going to cause some damage to the thyroid. It actually binds to the thyroid receptors, Brain cells are damaged. Nervous system, heart, wherever it comes into contact with whatever cell it comes into contact with, the gut, whatever cell, it's going to cause the damage there. So the other thing that it does, it displaces zinc. Remember how we spoke about, let me grab that quickly again, the periodic table, if I can find it. Here we go. So remember how in the last little video I spoke to you about the fact that zinc, cadmium and mercury right over here, they're a family. And so mercury is the bully, and it will basically just displace zinc, just because they look alike, but mercury is a little bit heavier. It also displaces iron for different reasons, but it displaces iron as well. And of course, iron is important in our blood and for the transport system of hemoglobin, for oxygen, etc., etc. So if zinc is displaced by mercury, and we have end up with zinc deficiencies, which I just from my personal clinical experience here, is most people are deficient in zinc. That can cause major health concerns as well. Anything from infections, like people just really susceptible to infections, and because their immune system's down, ulcers, poor healing, like poor wound healing, prostate enlargements, loss of smell and taste, stretch marks, that's zinc. So if you've inherited, if your mum's had stretch marks and you have stretch marks, and that's kind of zinc for you, zinc deficiency. Macular degeneration. Mercury itself can also be, it's very, very linked, and I believe it's the major reason for Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's just my my opinion on this, guys. So mercury can lead to sleep issues, to chronic fatigue. Everyone who comes in here with chronic fatigue has got mercury and very high levels of it as well. Depressive, sort of mood and depressive anger, behavioral issues. I find in children a lot of mercury as well. And of course, these metals are bioaccumulated in the system. It means that over years they just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And our children are exposed to them from a young age as well. And people with muscle twitches and MS, I have had clients here with MS, and I've had some success because we remove the mercury and some of the other co-infections, or the infections, I should say, that sort of happen when there's mercury, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. Allergies can be related to mercury, and joint pains and arthritic conditions as well. Hot flushes, all those signs and symptoms of menopause, for example. Think mercury. Epilepsy. And the other one is Candida. I'll talk a little bit about Candida. I think Candida gets a bad rap. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I'd link them up. High mercury levels and Candida, very often present together. And just something interesting for, if you are a person who is quite reactive to the foods of garlic and onion, if you just know that your body doesn't do well with garlic and onion, it's very possible that you've got some higher levels of mercury in your system as well. It's just it's something that I look for here. Okay, so just remember, I'm not diagnosing or anything. I'm just giving you a little bit of what I know. And the reason for that is because onions and garlic contain cysteine, and cysteine kind of it mobilizes mercury in the body. So yeah, you may not handle your onions and garlic very well. So just coming back to infections, you know, people, and this is what I deal with quite often. I treat a lot of people with Lyme-like disease, and I find infections in their system. Okay, with the community of Lyme, people like to call them the co-infections. I just look at them and go, it's probably the main reason why they have most of the symptoms of Lyme disease is because of the infections. Now, mercury fuels infections. It's like the food for your viruses and fungi and bacteria like Streptococcus and Staphylococcus. Okay, and Epstein-Barr virus just pops up with everyone with a chronic condition as well. So when you have a Candida overgrowth, now Candida gets a bad rap because, you know, Candida yeast infections. Okay, so I always say I'm going to write a book called Candida, you know, Beauty and Her Yeast. I have joked I'm going to call my book How to Make Your Beasties Your Besties. Yeah, look, Candida is not the problem. Candida becomes an issue because the body is sort of compromising a little bit. So Candida will overgrow under conditions of high toxic levels in the body, and specifically mercury and metals. Okay, so if there's a high toxicity, Candida is going to go, oh my goodness, I'm going to go feed on that. So the Candida overgrows because there's lots of food available for it. It's kind of protecting you, and it's sending you a message that says, hey, there's some bigger problems here. Now, Candida is something that occurs naturally inside of our bodies. Mercury is not. So the body compromises. Your body will go, okay, what's the lesser of the evils? Candida. So Candida overgrows. It's going to, sort of, your body is going to tolerate the Candida while it's feeding on the toxins. Okay, that's really what Candida overgrowth is in most cases. And sometimes what happens, Candida actually goes systemic. It's not just located in certain areas, like it can be in the vaginal area, or, you know, but Candida goes into the gut. So and then we blame Candida as the problem, and we want to treat Candida as the problem. Candida is not the problem. Okay, Candida is a messenger. It mops up the toxins. That's what it's doing, okay, when your body's toxic. And just the other little thing I thought I'd mention here today, and I'm going to finish up on that, is what I find here, because I can test with the Bicom, I can test for the combinations of stressors on the system. So not only do I find Epstein-Barr virus combined with the mercury and some other metals, but I also find Streptococcus and staph infections combining as well, and I find Candida combining. And then the last one that I find combining as this, I don't even know how to really put it, but it's like an electromagnetic frequency cluster. And we've got to bust them up together. And it's actually electromagnetic frequency itself. So the frequencies that people experience through anything that's got a battery in it, mobile phones, wireless, anything wireless, anything with a battery, or anything that's plugged into, you know, from your fridges and microwaves through to electronic equipment and computers and stuff like that. Too much exposure, electromagnetic exposure, can actually cause some frequency disturbance that really feeds all of these bugs together with mercury in the system as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's very, very, very interesting, and it can be remediated quite easily as well. So yeah, I do find people who are electromagnetically sensitive also, you know, they have a lot of mercury and other metals and often Candida in their system. So I hope you found that a little bit informative. Now in our next video, I am going to talk to you a little bit about the teeth and the importance of teeth in our health. Of course, I'm going to talk about the mercury there, but I'm also going to talk a little bit more about the dentistry, and then how can we actually do this metal detoxification of our system. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.